Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, David Wood, and with me is another friendly neighborhood philosopher, although he's not quite as friendly. You know him from his channel, Inspiring Philosophy. He is Mike Jones.
Who?
Mike Jones. Hey, Mike Jones. What you been doing talking about Islam?
Well, I joined TikTok, unfortunately, and there is a lot of crazy stuff on there, but there's also a lot of Muslim apologists on there trying desperately to show that Muhammad is in the Bible. It's just so bad. I have any argument I've gotten from them so far has just made me roll my eyes or laugh. I have seen nothing that's made me go, oh no, I gotta oh no, and this was challenging me. No, none of that.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'll put their arguments on the level of like Jesus mysticism. Like it's that bad. Like they're just totally divorced from the cultural context. Scholars would not take these arguments seriously. I've never come across a scholarly commentary on Isaiah or Song of Solomon, and they gotta like deal with these objections Muslim raise because they're just that bad.
It is pretty terrible. And I remember you. When were we debating? Was that January?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were debating down in Dallas, and Daniel Hakikachu was there, and I was debating Kenny Bomer, and people don't realize you seem to have a little temper, a little impatience when people are saying stupid or really horrible stuff. You kept like, I'm about to come out of my chair.
Oh, well, I mean, you got a freaking Muslim apologist up there, Kenny, just arguing, trying to justify what Muhammad did to Aisha. It's disgusting and horrible.
That guy literally handed me a copy of American Child Bride to convince me that child brides are actually okay. I've never. It's
like that just makes me like think worse of like people in the past. It doesn't make me think better of Muhammad. Like I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And so notice that would be like I'm debating a Muslim, and he's arguing that it's wrong to drink alcohol, and I hand him here's a copy of the history of beer. You see, you've been refuted. Haha.
Exactly.
And it was sometime after the debate, like that night or the next day or two, you're saying, man, you said something on Twitter like, I've heard so much horrible stuff. I'm thinking about responding to some Islamic arguments here. And,
oh yeah. And my favorite thing is like a bunch of Muslims were saying things like, oh no, David converted him to the dark side, like I was ever a friend of Islam. Muslims, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I've actually been watching David since before I started my channel, back when he was on a TV set with Sam Shimon somewhere. I just didn't go after Islam because I was busy doing other stuff, and I figured David and Sam basically had it covered. I'll do other issues. Mm-hmm. So no, I've never been converted recently. You're just not aware of my history.
Just so you know, since you have started responding to some of their arguments, you well, how do I put this? There are groups of online followers of various figures who their goal in life is to prevent people from doing that, right? It's to, because I've seen lots of people say, hey, I really have a heart for reaching Muslims, and so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna interact with them online, and like 2 months later, I never want to have anything to do with this again, right? Because there are people who, well, one, they'll just try everything. So at first it will be, oh, Mike, we really, really liked you when you were talking about God. We really liked your videos, but if you go down this road, we won't watch your videos anymore. So they'll
care.
Yeah, they'll try that. Then it will be, you're trying to be like David Wood. You're trying to be like David Wood.
It's already started. Yeah. It's already started.
Oh yeah, see, I know. And eventually it'll be, we'll chop your head off. We'll chop your head off, and we'll kill your wife and all this stuff. You'll eventually. They will basically go down the line, try everything they can try to get you to stop responding to their arguments. And just think about how strange that is, right? You guys are putting out an argument about Muhammad in the Bible that's supposed to be convincing, right? I mean, compare this with Descartes. I mean, you study philosophy. You remember Descartes? He puts out meditations on first philosophy, and he asks people to respond to it and to refute it. so that people get both sides back and forth, both sides of the issue, and he publishes it with responses from other philosophers who are criticizing him and saying he's wrong. You compare this with Islam, and it's here's our argument. It's completely ridiculous. All you need to do is spend literally 5 minutes of examining the passage at most, and you'll see how stupid it is. But if you say one word about how dumb it is, we're coming after you.
Yeah, and that's what's been kind of happening in this back and forth with Song of Solomon, Isaiah 21, Isaiah 42. Like, they don't read these texts. It's clearly obvious they have not read the book of Isaiah. It's clearly obvious they've not read Song of Solomon, especially when one Muslim was quoting Song of Solomon chapter 1 of Solomon's bride speaking, and he was saying it was about Muhammad. Now, to be fair, when I pointed that out to him, he did say, okay, maybe it was wrong about that, but I'm right about everything else. And I was like, okay, sure you are.
Wait. I think I saw that video of yours. Is that when he talks about because it is something very common that they do. They'll go to any mention of like Kedar and stuff like that. And so let me see if I can find that. Okay, so I have Song of Solomon here. So let's see if we got this. Let me pull it up on screen.
Yeah, Song of Solomon chapter 1. He mentioned how it's like, it says, I am dark like the tents of Kedar. Like, gee, who could this be but anybody but Muhammad? And all I had to do was read the passage.
Hey, wait, look, it's on the screen. Watch what happens when I scroll up just to the heading, right? So it's, I'm black and beautiful. That's a good tagline, right? I'm black and beautiful, you daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. All right, let me go up slightly, and the bride. That's his speaking. There's literally a heading, the bride. And so you're telling me this guy actually he actually went to a passage, said this is the clear evidence that this is talking about Muhammad, and it's a passage where the bride is speaking?
Yeah, he used that in a couple other ones we can get to later. But yeah, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, I mean, it's just the same with Isaiah. It's evidently clear they have not read these passages. They have not read scholarly commentators. They have just found these verses here and there, and then they jump to conclusions without reading the context. I did a short little video responding to some guy trying to say there was a prophecy of Muhammad in Isaiah 29, verse 12. If he would have just read verse 11, he would have seen it. He's taking it out of context. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's one of the classical ones. And by the way, Isaiah 42 has become more popular in recent years, even though that one does go way back. That goes way back to the early stages of Islam. The reason that's become more popular in recent years is that most of the arguments they use, you just have to read a verse or two before or afterwards, or at least read the entire chapter. And so it's really easy to refute them once you start trying to refute them. Whereas Isaiah 42, it's kind of vague, and there's nothing you point in there, and there's nothing you just say, ha, this would make Muhammad a false prophet. You kind of have to understand the book of Isaiah and what's being claimed there. So notice they're as time goes on, they go for vaguer passages,
And that's exactly what I said to him. This is so vague, you can make this fit to anyone. I mean, it fits for Jesus just as well. It's that's that vague.
Yeah.
But whew.
And if you we should probably do an entire live stream going through Isaiah 42, because once you look up all these things that are being said and you find them elsewhere in the book of Isaiah and they are referring to the Messiah, then it starts becoming very clear.
You can find them in even the prior chapter. Like the language almost repeats. It's like, guys, you didn't read it. You didn't read 2nd Isaiah.
Yep. And but the issue on TikTok, because I've seen people, why are you addressing this again? Hasn't the argument from Song of Solomon been destroyed? Guys, we'll stop refuting it when they stop using it. Right?
Yeah, and it's fun to refute because there's just such bad arguments. Like, I don't even know where to begin, but I mean, like let's talk about the Song of Solomon. I mean, if you get this, it's the Dead Sea Scrolls Bible. Those are the earliest copies we have of the Song of Solomon. Now remember, they say Song of Solomon is mentioned in chapter 5, verse 16. Interestingly enough, in some of the earliest manuscripts, that section is missing from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's not even like it's been like fragmented or something. They just stopped at about verse 4:6 and it's picked up at 6:11. They just cut out that whole section in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And scholars say one explanation is the sensual language and erotic imagery that is found in much of the missing portion. The Song of Songs was evidently a controversial book before the time of Jesus. So they're saying that maybe the scenes were so embarrassed and just, prudish about this section they claim Muhammad's in because of its utter sexually explicit nature. They just cut it out entirely.
And I've seen Muslims say the Bible can't be the word of God because of passages like the Song of Solomon, and it can't be God revealing this. And yet we turn to others, and so some Muslims will be saying, "You see, this sounds like a porn film. This can't be the word of God." And then they'll go right to the middle of the book. "You see, this is Muhammad. This is the prophecy of Muhammad." It's not
even the middle of the book. It's the most sexually explicit section of the whole book.
Yeah. Yeah, and if for people who are new to this and who are wondering why they would be doing this, let me just pull up a verse of the Quran and you'll understand it. Let's see. Here it is. And let me see if I can get this all on the screen here. Okay, so notice this is Surah 7, verse 157 of the Quran, and it begins, "Those who follow the messenger, the prophet who can neither read nor write, whom they will find described in the Torah and the gospel which are with them." Notice, Torah and the gospel which are with them. This says we still have the Torah and the gospel. Muslims, do you believe we still have the Torah and the gospel? No, you believe we have corrupt things that we call the Torah and the gospel. It's pretty odd to call them the Torah and the gospel if they're corruptions. Like, I believe that the Quran is a corruption of some earlier true claims. I wouldn't call it a true revelation, therefore, because it has some true claims in it. But this is why. And notice the problem. One, it says the Torah and the gospel, and they're going to Song of Solomon. So they're obviously including the entire Old Testament as Torah. But do you see any other problem? If Muslims are saying, hey, your book's been corrupted, and we're going to prove Muhammad from your book, do you see any problems there, Mike?
Yeah, it's a waste of their time. Like, what are you doing? You're saying this book is corrupted, but you're also saying we should trust it when it's predicting Muhammad. Like, they'd have a much better apologetic if they would just say it's corrupted and say, well, we just can't use any of it. Like, no, they got to waste all this effort in these really bad arguments.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, where do you want to go to start looking at Muhammad in Song of Solomon?
Let's talk about the section that was cut out in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's like 4:7 to 6:11, because this is the sexually explicit part. This is where the intercourse is happening. Mm-hmm. I apologize to my mother for things I might say here. I'm going to try to use other language and not be so explicit. But I mean, if you go to like Song of Solomon, starting in chapter 4, this is where things start getting interesting. Like, Solomon is describing his bride here at the end. So if you go to like verse 10. "How beautiful you are, my love, my sister, my bride. How much better your love is than wine, the fragrance of your oils than any spice. Your lips drip with nectar." I feel like Barry White should be playing somewhere. "My honey and milk are under your tongue."
Oh, baby.
"The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon." Verse 12, things get a little interesting. "Your garden is locked, my sister, my bride. A spring locked."
Wait, one second. What translation are you using? Because I can pull it up.
ESV.
Okay. Let's see. I will have this up in a few seconds. You can go ahead and continue talking. I'll pull it up in a sec.
Verse 12 is interesting. "Your garden is locked." The bride's garden is locked. It's a spring. So it's associated with water. Then it says, "Your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates." Now, Tremper Longman, who wrote a commentary on Song of Solomon, says these refer to like things like sort of like extending out. He suggests it might refer to just the carpet area, I guess you could say, if I could say that in the cleanest way possible. And also because of what follows after. It says, "Your shoots," the carpet area, "is an orchard of pomegranates with the choicest fruits." And then we know that it's an area that is associated with water or wet. It's a garden. It has shoots. And if you go down to verse 16, he says, he talks about the wind, the north wind, the south wind, "blow upon my garden. Let its spices flow." He kind of wants to get a whiff of something, it sounds like, based on that. And then she replies...
Hey, by the way, I just did I just did a video on Allah blowing into Mary's vagina in the Quran. It's interesting stuff. But all right, go ahead. Anyway, just
Yeah,
wanted to get that in
but
there.
so he's talking about her, yeah, her downstairs area. It's pretty obvious, but it's wet. It's a garden. It's got shoots.
Blow
It's
upon
got.
my garden.
Then what does she say right after this? Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his choicest fruits. Guys, do I need to explain to you what's happening here? If Muhammad is the beloved, as they try to say in verse 16, what is he doing here? He's going downtown to get a snack. If I
To anticipate something that will come up a bit later in this video, this woman had been dead for 15 centuries or so by the time Muhammad is lusting after her. So we're going to have some problems
yeah.
here in a few. All right, go ahead.
So then chapter 5 picks up that things get even spicier. The male Solomon actually says, I came to my garden, I gathered my myrrh with my spice, I ate my honeycomb with my honey, I drank my wine with my milk. And then others are encouraging it. They're saying, eat and be drunk with love. They're saying, this is great. You guys are married. Have your fun. Then we start to see things get a little more interesting after this.
Yeah. One second. Just going back to the very beginning there. Going back to the very beginning of chapter 5. That little point right there, because her beloved is Muhammad, and he says, I've come into my garden, my sister, my bride, I've gathered my myrrh along with my balsam. Balsam, this can only refer to Muhammad, because
yeah, they try that, like, no, balsam can never be anywhere else. Like,
I've eaten my honeycomb with my honey, I've drunk my wine with my I have drunk my wine with my milk. So this guy's drinking wine here.
Oh man, there we go.
There you have it. Muhammad was a drunkard.
Wait till we get to chapter 6. Things get even more interesting with what Muhammad's doing, if this is him.
All right.
But in verse 2, this is when things get very physical, because she says, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love. For my head is wet with dew, my locks with the drops of the night. I had put off my garment. How could I put it on? I bathed my feet. How could I soil them? My beloved put his hand in the latch. Now, this is the important line here in verse 4. Tremper Longman talks about this in his commentary. This is basically an ancient Near Eastern euphemism. What he's basically saying is that if you go to Isaiah 57, 8 to 10, this same euphemism shows up. It's about a hand extending out. It's a euphemism for something else extending out. Martin Pope, for example, notes that in Ugaritic texts, The Birth of the Beautiful Gods, the male appendage is often referred to as a hand. So this is not talking about his literal hand. This is talking about something else, guys. So then, and of course, he has put his hand in the latch or keyhole. It doesn't take a lot to figure out what is happening there. This is basically intercourse at this point. I'm sorry. So if this is about Muhammad, it's describing something pretty graphic here. First, he has gone down on her, and now they are literally engaging in intercourse.
And it's all happening with a woman who's been dead for 15 centuries. There's a word for that, ladies and gentlemen. The word is necrophile. Someone who's sexually attracted to someone who's already dead.
I know. And, she follows it up. I arose to open to my beloved. She opened, and my hand stripped with myrrh. This talks about, everything is getting hot and spicy, I guess you could say. After this, scholars are a little confused about what happens in verses like 6 to 9. Tremper Longman suggests she might be having a bad dream. So either there's two possibilities. She has a bad dream of her lover leaving her, and now she is confused. She's running through town, and people are not physically assaulting her like it sort of suggests in verse 7. It's just sort of like they're shooting eyes at her, like, she's a woman who's been, betrothed and she's alone now. She looks like a prostitute kind of thing. It could either be she's having a bad dream, or it could be that they had intercourse and then he left and now she's alone and she's going through town looking for him, not really dressed appropriately, I guess you could say, and so people are giving her bad eye shots. So the watchmen found them, and as they went about the city, they beat me, they bruised me, they took away my veil. It's probably not, Longman knows it's probably not literally, that this is happening. It's probably more she's either having a bad dream or he went away somewhere and now she's trying to find him. So then we're getting close to the alleged Muhammad section. She moves on and she finds women in Jerusalem. "O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him I am sick with love." They basically reply like, "Well, what's so great about this guy?
Yeah.
What's so great about him?" Well, she describes him. "My beloved is radiant
and by the way, notice it's daughters of Jerusalem. I'm talking to you, daughters of Jerusalem. So this isn't, hey, you ladies of Mecca. Why don't you tell me here? It's daughters of Jerusalem. And then it's tell us why he's so wonderful. Why is he better than anyone else? And then we get into the description, which our Muslim friends insist is the description of Muhammad. All right, go ahead.
What's funny is the Muslim I was debating with on TikTok says this is the daughters of Jerusalem describing their beloved. And I had to point out to him, you didn't read the passage. It's literally the bride describing her beloved. It's not the daughters of Jerusalem. If you would have just read it, you would have seen that. Mm-hmm. So she says, "My beloved is radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000. Now this is a passage we'll come back to. "His head is the finest gold. His locks are wavy, black as a raven. His eyes..."
Raven, that must be Muhammad.
No one else.
Muhammad had black hair. Black hair, I say.
No one else has ever had black hair, David. You got to know that.
You already got a problem right there. My beloved is radiant and ruddy. According to Islam's most trusted sources, Muhammad was the whitest person in the history of humanity.
Well, they translate radiant as white, even though Longman notes it means like dazzling or radiant, just like shining.
There you go.
No,
it's proof of Muhammad. Again, and you've got 10,000, and that's always, anytime they see 10,000, since Muhammad once had an army of 10,000, whenever you see 10,000, whenever you see Arabia mentioned anywhere, Kedar mentioned anywhere, camel mentioned anywhere, and 10,000 mentioned anywhere, it is indisputably a prophecy of Muhammad, even if it has nothing to do with any prophet or if it makes no sense in context. It's always just giving you, since you're going to be dealing with these arguments, you're gonna find anytime these four things are mentioned, it's Muhammad.
Well, I already pointed out to them. Why don't they go to Jeremiah 49, where it says, "Concerning Kedar and the kingdoms of Azor that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, struck down, thus says the Lord, rise up, advance against Kedar, destroy the people of the east." So is that about Muhammad and Kedar and the Arabs? Is that all about them too?
Yeah, we've got similar passages with Mahmad, if they're going to say that refers to Muhammad. You've got God saying he's going to profane the Mahmad of your eyes and so on later. But we'll get to that. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the other thing about this is it could easily be describing King David, because King David was said to be ruddy. Mm-hmm. He ascribed 10,000 as well. So it's very vague. You could fit this with so many people. But I mean, why is the rest of the passage not really describing Muhammad? Like his cheeks are like beds of spices. Mm-hmm. 12 says his eyes are like doves beside the stream of water, bathed in milk, sitting beside a full pool. His cheeks are like beds of spices, mounds of sweet-smelling herbs. His lips are lilies. What are they thinking? Like, what do they think's going on here? Do they really think that this is like Muhammad? He's just so freaking sexy, like his arms are rods of gold set with jewels. His body is polished ivory.
There you go. See, Muhammad was white.
Yeah, there he's white. He can't
polished
be
ivory.
He's got to be from Scandinavia, you know. Where was I? His legs are alabaster columns set on bases of gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as the cedars. His mouth is most sweet, and he is altogether desirable.
Muhammad. Wrong. He's altogether Muhammad.
Altogether, yes. But like, let's look at what we've read up to this point. Solomon is having sex with his bride. He goes down on her. They have intercourse. He leaves. She's looking for him, and she comes to the daughters of Jerusalem. Who is she describing? Solomon or some guy that's supposed to come 1,000 years later? It doesn't make sense with the context. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just because I can keep coming back to this over and over again as you're discussing these passages, but just look at the method of interpretation here. So this passage starting in verse 10. My beloved is radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000. Now, if someone says he's distinguished among 10,000, that's just saying, hey, if you lined up 10,000 people, this guy's the best. He's the hottest. You see, this is referring to Muhammad's army of 10,000 people. Where are you getting that? Where are you getting that? It's You're getting that from Zakir Naik and Ahmed Deedat. That's where you're getting it. People who made this up and who now, anytime anyone in the history of humanity mentions 10,000 up, it's referring to Muhammad's army, even if it has absolutely nothing to do. She's not saying, oh, yes, he's standing at the head of an army of 10,000 about to attack Mecca. And that's my beloved.
Well, here's what's interesting, though. So go into chapter 6. She describes her beloved. Then the others reply, well, where is your beloved gone, O most beautiful woman? Where has your beloved turned?
One second. I just wanted to make everyone, because most people will be familiar with what we're talking about right here. So I just wanted to zero in very quickly on this verse 16. Guys, this is
good idea. Yeah.
This is the heart of it right here, verse 16. So after this passage, and look, so starting in verse 10, my beloved, he's radiant and ruddy, and then you can go down the list here. She starts talking about one body part after another. His head, verse 12, his eyes, verse 13, his cheeks, his lips, his arms, his body, his legs, talking about going part by part about how hot this dude is and how attracted she is to him. And then notice after each one of the parts, cheeks, lips, arms, and so on, then mouth. His mouth is most sweet, and he is altogether desirable, which is the Hebrew word Mahmud, and Muslims say this is actually Muhammad here. Muhammad is named. She's talking about Muhammad. Notice the end of that verse 16. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So the person she's referring to here, our Muslim friends insist this is talking about Muhammad. She says she's talking about her beloved. So whoever her beloved is in the Song of Solomon, that's going to be Muhammad, right? Because we're not letting you get away from that. It's talking about Muhammad, and now you're stuck with this being Muhammad. All right, so you want to go to chapter 6 now?
Yeah. So yeah, starting in verse 4, we said they started having, he went down on her, then they had sex, then he went missing, she went to look for him, she came to the daughters of Jerusalem, described him. They then reply, well, where has he gone to? And starting in verse 6. She says, this is why I think it's probably a dream she was having of him leaving, because then she says, my beloved has gone down to his garden, to the bed of spices, to graze in the garden and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine.
What verse are you in?
Grazes.
What verse are you in?
6, 2, 3.
Oh, 6, 2, and 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He grazes among the lilies. Guys, we already established what the garden is. Now Muhammad is going down and grazing. If this is literal, because they say this is about, they translate bed of spices as like the what's the name of the tree again? Did they say constantly refers to Mecca?
Oh, balsam?
Balsam trees. Yeah, they'll translate bed of spices as like balsam trees, even though the word for tree is not in the passage. So Muhammad has gone to Mecca, bed of spices, to graze on lilies. Is this really about Muhammad, or is this about a euphemism for him once again returning to what he did in the end of chapter 4?
Let me just say for all of those, because one of their objections is that there have been plenty of Christian commentators who say this is about Christ's love for their church and so on, and that idea is based on the idea that God's not going to be talking about something so explicitly sexual. And my view is, no, God invented sex. God invented sex between men and women and so on, and so it's a wonderful thing. And so I have no problem with these interpretations. For those of you who God would never talk about sex,
oh no,
keep in mind there's clearly some sex going on here. Some of it's interpretation. If you're having a problem with some of the stuff that that Mike Jones here is saying, yes, that some of it's a matter of, there's clearly some sex going on here. Some of it's a matter of interpretation. But the hilarious part is the idea that this is Muhammad here.
I've not even gotten to the best part. Okay, I've not even gotten to the best part here. So yeah, so she says, they're like, where is your lover gone? Oh, he's gone down to his garden, kind of thing. And then he talks about how beautiful she is. But then in verse 11 and verse 12 of this chapter, now this is my favorite part.
Going down to verse 11?
Go to verse 11. She says, I went down to the nut orchard. Guys, it doesn't take rocket science. Let me just read Tremper Longman's commentary on this. He's talking about another scholar who has interestingly pointed. Yeah, I know. I
went down to the nut orchard.
So, as interestingly pointed out, the connection between the nut and the genitalia of both men and women. The whole nut represents the male gland, even down to contemporary English slang, and the open nut, the woman's vulva. In any case, the verse as a whole is a coy suggesting of intimate relations between a man and a woman. Okay, she says, I went down to the nut shore to look at the blossoms of the valley, to see whether the vines had budded, whether the pomegranates were in bloom. But before I was aware, my desire set me.
Honey?
And this is about Muhammad.
Honey? Would you like to visit the nut orchard? What's wrong? Wow. Oh, boy. This is Muhammad, everyone. This is Muhammad.
Yeah, when I said at the beginning how bad Muslim apologetics arguments are, I wasn't lying. This is really bad to try to read this as a prophecy of Muhammad. I told this guy, this is a point of laughter for Christians and Jews when Muslims do this. It's just, what are you guys thinking?
Wow. All right. So, is there anything else you wanted to go to from this passage? Because I wanted to point out one verse from the next chapter.
No, go for it. I know exactly what you're going to do.
Do you?
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Going down to
you can't predict.
Never mind.
You can't predict this. You can't predict this. All right. So, oops. All right. So we have here admiration by the groom, and then he's talking about how hot the bride is. And keep in mind, this is Muhammad talking about a woman who's been dead for 15 centuries. How beautiful is your dead, rotting bones? Something like that, right? So, how beautiful are your feet in sandals, prince's daughter. The curves of your hips are like jewels. The work of the hands of an artist. Your navel is like a round goblet that never lacks mixed wine. This is Muhammad, obsessed with wine. Your belly is like a heap of wheat surrounded with lilies. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. So he keeps going down the list here. And then, oh, look, he starts talking about breasts again. Your breasts are like its clusters. Oh, anyway, we get down to verse 10. This is talking about the bride. This is the bride talking, and she says, I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. Remember, according to Surah 5, I said Surah 5 because I talk about the Quran so much. According to Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 16, Muhammad is her beloved. She says, this is my beloved. This is my beloved, right? So Muhammad is her beloved. And she says, I am my beloved's. So this woman is Muhammad's. And his desire, Muhammad's desire, is for her. So Muhammad is desiring a married woman who's been dead for 15 centuries. And guys, once again, that makes you a necrophile. That makes Muhammad a necrophile. He's desiring a woman who's been dead for 15 centuries. So notice, ladies and gentlemen, notice what we have here. So you're talking, between 900 and 1000 BC, that this is being said by a woman. So if you want to say that she's talking about Muhammad, keep in mind, this woman's a prophet now. Right? You guys don't have lady prophets in Islam, but this woman's a prophet. She gets a vision, according to your apologist, if we're supposed to take this seriously. According to your apologist, this lady prophet gets a vision of Muhammad, and she just starts going off on how attractive he is. And then somehow they have this. So what is she? Is everything a fantasy about all the sexual stuff that's going on? that she's talking about. But she also says that his desires for her. So either he's lusting after some old dried up bones, or he's getting a vision of her too, and he's seeing how hot she is, and they're having like not quite phone sex. It's like prophet revelation sex or something like. What are they talking about here? But notice, this is what happened. This is what happens if you start saying, "Hey, here's this book about two people going to town on each other," and it's actually Muhammad in there. Right, this is just what you're stuck with. All right, back to you. Back to you, Mike.
There's no indication at all that the beloved throughout this is anyone other than Solomon. It's pretty clear in chapters 1, chapter 3, the beloved is Solomon. To say that it all of a sudden it's now a different beloved in chapter 5 is once again eisegesis. It's reading what you want into the text. I don't even know where they get this crap from. It's just desperation at this point. It starts with him going down on her, then intercourse, then him going down on her, then her going down on him, and somewhere in the middle of this they get a vision of Muhammad. It's like, do you guys really want this? Is that how desperate you are to get prophecies of Muhammad in the Quran or in the Bible? I mean,
yes.
Like,
yeah, and so notice notice the overall strategy, right? Because there are a couple points on the tactic here. Muhammad says that he's referred to in both the Torah and the Gospel, not in some long lost versions of it, in the ones that we still have. He's there. Well, guess what? If they don't find Muhammad in the books that we still have, then Muhammad's a false prophet, seems like. Seems like Muhammad's a false prophet, right? If I say, hey, go over there, that books they've got, I'm in there. Then if you go and not in there, then you got a problem. So they have to find him. And so if you look at how this works, hey, we found out there's a Hebrew word that sounds a little bit like Muhammad. It's Mahmud. And so let's look these up. Oh, wait a minute. It occurs in a bunch of places. In none of them does it make sense. But here's one that we can use in Song of Solomon 5:16. Here's a place where we can say it's talking about Muhammad, and as long as no one reads the passage, we can say that this is referring to Muhammad. And the goal there is to find a bunch of people, because even if you're preaching to Christians, they haven't memorized this chapter and they're not too familiar with it. Let alone Muslims who've never read it in their lives, and you just go and tell them Muhammad's right there. He's mentioned by name. Well, they'll even say Muhammadim, right? And so they'll say it's there. And this is just, I notice what the strategy is, and this is part of the reason you've got the young apologists on TikTok, is the old school Muslim apologists, they're always looking for an atmosphere of ignorance. Here's an atmosphere of ignorance. Here's people who don't know any better, and I can say whatever I want, and I can basically deceive people way faster than people can ever come in and correct the mistakes. Because if you look at Zakir Naik or Ahmed Dida, they'd be speaking to thousands and thousands of people. Well, all those thousands of people just walked out, yes, Song of Solomon 5:16, and you're trying to talk to them and going, oh, no, that's not the case. Well, guess what? they just mass deceive people, and then they run out and so on. But eventually people start catching on a platform. Like, my viewers are already very familiar with this, to the point where they're going, why are you bringing this? Why are you talking about this again? But notice, new platform, TikTok, new generation. They don't know anything. We have an opportunity to go in there and convince them. And it's just a sad situation of, can we deceive people faster than people can come in and correct it? It's like, guys, does the true religion need this methodology?
Well, let's talk about the word Mahmed, because I'm just confused on where they were getting this pronunciation, because when I talk to Hebrew scholars like that, the second letter in Mahmed is chet, and it's a ch sound, like it's a ch sound. The first letter is a mem, and the second letter is a mem. Last letter is a dalet, so you just pronounce those letters Mahmed, like it's. So why are they getting it? Why are they constantly pronouncing this as Muhammadim? Mm-hmm. Well, actually, throwing them a bone here, which I'll take away in a minute. The way you pronounce this in the Masoretic pronunciation is Muhammadim. So in the way the Masoretics, when they added their vowel points and added their pronunciations, they pronounced it Muhammadim in the Song of Solomon. The problem is that we're pretty sure that it's not the way you should be reading it. So, for example, scholars like I just had it here. Hold on. Scholars like Ernst, what is it? Ernst Wurzwein produced a thing called the Text of the Old Testament, and he's talking about the coming in of Hebrew, the Masoretic points. He says in his book that the number of observations have been made questioning the authenticity of the Masoretic pronunciation. It's altogether probable that the pronunciation of Hebrew had undergone some changes in this interval, especially considering that it was written without vowels. He goes on in that page 27 to note, this is important. It would seem necessary then to expect a fair number of artificial forms in the Tiberian system. That's where the Masoretics are coming from, related to the Masoretics' desire to produce correct pronunciation, which made them susceptible to such outside influences as Syriac and Islamic phylogeny. So he's basically saying that the Masoretic vowel point was influenced from Islamic and Syriac words. That's where it's coming from. They added things like double pronunciations they didn't need. They used much later forms, and this is clear to scholars. And even Muslim scholars like Mustafa al-Azami, I think that's how you pronounce it, wrote a book called The History of the Quranic Texts. And he even says in his book on page 241, he cites Ernst's book, and citing you can't trust the Masoretic vowel points, the pronunciation, because it's been so much influenced by so much by later like Arabic and Syriac pronunciations. The real way you would pronounce this word is Mahmed. You would not add an additional syllable in there because there's no original letter in there that would be between the chet and the second mem to get you there. It's like our English word much. I'm not going to say mucha. I'm going to say I'm going to say much. Same with this. It's Mahmed. That's probably the most likely the earliest pronunciation. You don't get Muhammadim until after Islam has influenced the Masoretic vowel points, and then they start pronouncing it that way. That's where this pronunciation is coming from. It's coming from Islam.
Yeah. I put the word in the Strongs there up on the screen, and the transliteration they give is Mahmad, but then it gives the places where it occurs in the Bible. 1 Kings 26, and it shall be that whatsoever is pleasant in thine eyes, and so on. So notice, Muslims, if Mahmad is Muhammad, and it shall be Muhammad in thine eyes, very common to translate this as Mahmad in your eyes, because it's something desirable or something pleasant in your eyes. Second Chronicles 36:19, all its valuable articles. So this is all its Muhammad articles. Notice, and destroyed the Muhammad vessels. And notice right there, Songs 5:16. That's where we get Muhammad. Isaiah 64:11, and all our precious things have become. So all our Muhammad have become. Lamentations 1:10. All her Muhammad, for she hath seen. Lamentations 2:4, that's Muhammad. Just giving the references here for anyone who wants to look up these passages and find out how.
Notice on the screen, it says up at the top in the other side, it says only one occurrence here, 5 occurrences here. Mm-hmm. Muslims are kind of excited because the one in Song of Solomon 5:16, they'll say this is the only occurrence of this word.
That's Mahmadim, that's the plural.
Yeah, well, the way I understand is there's often in the Hebrew Bible only one construction of a lot of words. Mm-hmm. Like it's common for things like verbs and adjectives, and they only have one construction of an entire word, ever. So when they say like, well, this is the only time this word ever occurs in the Bible, yeah, that's for a lot of words in the Bible. You guys are just
even several of the occurrences of variations of Mahmad only have one occurrence. But notice, if you wanted to say that because of the consonantal roots or something like that it refers to Muhammad, the closest you would get is just the Mahmad, right? Mm-hmm. It's just without the plural ending. That's the one that would be most like Muhammad. And they just don't make sense. So again, just the references here for anyone who wants to look up these passages. We don't really need to go through them. Lamentations 1:10, Lamentations 2:4. Ezekiel, very interesting passage because notice. So your Muslim friend on TikTok, he used Song of Solomon chapter 1 and said this shows that it refers to Muhammad, but it was a woman. Well, if Mahmad is a woman, then Ezekiel 24:16. God refers to Ezekiel's wife as Mahmad, because it's his something. It was what's desirable to him, or something pleasing in his eyes. So this would mean that Muhammad is Ezekiel's wife, and then later in verses 21 and 25, God's going to destroy what is Mahmad to the Israelites, what was precious to them. And then, of course, you have Hosea 9:6, Hosea 9:16. And so notice and Joel 3:5. So notice, IP, we've got multiple passages now. So we've got Song of Solomon 1 and Ezekiel 24, both of which say that Muhammad was a woman. And so since he obviously started off as a man in Mecca, he was not only a necrophile, sexually attracted to a woman who's been dead for 15 centuries, he underwent some sort of transgender procedure, became a woman, and a time-traveling woman. He traveled back in time, became Ezekiel's wife, then traveled further back in time to become the bride, But wait a minute, the bride is the one who's sexually attracted to him in the future, so he fell in love with himself after he traveled through time and became a woman.
This is the worst sci-fi movie ever.
I got to talk to my friend Vocab and see if he wants to make a movie, a little Muhammad movie out of this one.
And all this could be avoided if they would just stop the crap and just say, well, we think your Bible's corrupted, and so we're not going to trust anything from it. Instead of doing these mental gymnastics to try to find references to Muhammad. Like they're just shooting themselves in the foot. And, again, scholars like, Ulf Bergstrom or Axel Van de Sande will say that, the Masoretic vowel points, you just can't trust that pronunciation. It's much later. It's much added. This is Mahmad. You don't add an additional syllable in there to get Muhammad. Notice Mahmad is 2, Muhammad is 3. Okay, there's no way you can get this in this original reading here. Now, they say the plural was added for respect. It's Muhammadim in the passage. If you want, you can play clip 1, because there's another guy on TikTok trying to make this argument that it's Muhammadim because it's plural's added for respect. That happens in Hebrew all the time, apparently.
All right, so you want to play and by the way, that's the same. They're getting all this just from their apologists, who were the ones who started lying about it. But then, no matter what you tell them, they will just believe their apologists instead of listening to reason or going where the actual evidence points. All right, so let's go ahead and look at a clip of someone who's and I might pause it. Just tell me if you want to pause it at any point, so we can if you want to respond. Hey, what is this anyway? He's not even talking. He's clicking.
No, it's just this typical TikTok type stuff. They do this kind of crap where they just put text up on the screen.
Okay, well, I'll just. We should probably stop and read what he's saying. Then it sounds like he's making the Predator noise. You remember Predator? The Predator would make that clicking noise.
It sounds weird. I'm too old. I don't get a lot of the TikTok stuff.
Okay, so he's looks like he's having a dialogue. Oh, he's going back and forth, and in one he's got a kufi, and one he's got regular hair. He's doing what I do. He stole that from me. All right. So the Muslim hymn says, Song of Solomon 5, Muhammadim is in the Bible, and him is plural of respect. And then I guess this represents you. Muhammadim.
Oh, he didn't respond to me. This is a much older video.
Oh, okay. So him is plural of number, not plural of respect. That's why it's translated altogether lovely. And then he says, what about Elohim? Ha ha! So a word that's normally translated God, although has other translations as well. And Elohim is plural of number as well. And then he says, well, why does Genesis 1:1 Elohim translated God instead of gods? Where's the S? Ha ha! You gotta love TikTok apology. Oh, look, and then he looks over at the camera like, got you. Thanks for watching. Okay. That's the end. So, all right, you've been destroyed. Are you ready to convert to Islam? Elohim, it's clearly the plural of respect. It can't be number. And therefore, Song of Solomon must be plural of respect as well. And therefore, it's talking about Muhammad, the time-traveling, transgendered prophet who fell in love with the female version of himself. And the two began, lusting after each other across the centuries.
Yes, that's just absolute crap. It's very rare, and I've talked to Hebrew scholars like my friend Ben Stanhope. It's very rare for the eem ending to be added to a Hebrew name as sort of like a respect thing. First of all, Elohim that's just how it is morphologically. It's like, David, you're wearing glasses. That refers to a single pair of glasses. It does not refer to multiple glasses. That's just the way that word is. It's like the word fruit. Depending on the context, it can be plural or singular. Bowl of fruit, piece of fruit. Same with like word like deer. Elohim is like that. It does not imply plurality. It can be plural or it can be singular depending on the context. Eem has not been added for respect because it never happens for Yahweh. No one ever says Yahwehim. No one ever says Solomonim or Davidim. And you can even go to the Song of Solomon. It mentions Solomon by name a couple times. It doesn't say Solomonim.
And by the way, because that's a very important point. So everyone, keep in mind the point that's being made here. The word that's used in Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 16, that they want to say refers to Muhammad is Mahmadim, and it's plural. The I am ending indicates that it's plural. And I've seen different suggestions as to why this is. There is some have said that there is a plural of intensity. I've also seen that she just went point by point on how attractive all his different parts are. And so you're altogether attractive or desirable, plural, because you're talking about a collection of all his sexy parts. So various reasons, but the question is, why is it being used? If it's Muhammad, if it's a name, why are you attaching the plural onto a name? Because notice, Elohim is not a name, right? Yahweh is a name, right? So why are you attaching it onto a name? And the response is, it's a plural of respect. And everyone I've seen who knows Hebrew goes, what is a plural of respect? What are you talking about? Because notice the claim is that you, in order to show respect for a person, in this case a prophet, if you want to show respect to a prophet, then you attach this plural ending onto the person's name. And so if that's the case, then we should say Abraham's, we should see David's, we should see Noah's when people are addressing them, because this would indicate respect. Isaiah's, Ezekiel's, we should see this, and it's not what we see. So where are they getting this idea that you attach I am onto the end of a person's name to indicate respect? Well, they made it up to explain why it's plural. That's it. It's, hey, what do we got here? We got a plural. Let's just make up plural of respect. Why? Because no one in this audience is going to know any better. And they will carry this argument and spread it to millions of people before anyone actually steps in and goes, what are you talking about? And even when you step in and say, what are you talking about? Where are you getting this? They will believe Zakir Naik over anyone. You could bring the greatest Hebrew scholars in the world to say that's absolutely idiotic and complete nonsense. They will still believe Zakir Naik. They've just been trained to mindlessly accept whatever their apologists say.
Yeah, it's exceptionally rare in Hebrew for this to happen. It might happen a couple times occasionally, but I mean, that's not what they're doing for Elohim. That's just how the word is. It doesn't mean gods either. It means, as Michael Heiser notes, it means just some sort of spiritual being. Anything in the spiritual realm is an Elohim, and Yahweh's an Elohim, but he is above all other Elohim. So it doesn't even mean gods. So sorry, this is not. Christians try to even do this with the Trinity. They try to put a Trinity into the Elohim. That also doesn't work either. Again, it's very clear that this is just the way the word is. It's like our word for fruit or deer or glasses. It's a plural, but it's referring to something singular, or sometimes it can be referring to plural depending on context. Yeah.
All right. So,
if you want, we can play clip 3. This was the last response I got from this Muslim on TikTok. I responded to him pointing out that he had said Muhammad was a woman and jumped on some of his other arguments. But he tries to say there's more references to Muhammad in this passage, like when it says he's white and ruddy, or when it says he's coming with 10,000. Like, we already kind of addressed that. But it's the same kind of crap. It's
all
like...
Right. Let's go ahead and take a peek. So the third clip, clip 3?
Clip 3, yeah.
All right, let's check it out. It's got something for us.
You think Muhammad...
No, actually wrong one.
Wrong one?
Son of Solomon.
Yeah, that was
His
my
name,
first video.
physical
yeah.
description, and location are all alluded to.
Yeah, that was the first response he said to me and then I went back, and we went back and forth a couple times until I just got tired. But yeah, it'd be the other one then, I believe.
Number 2, let's see. They both started off the same. I don't know if you sent me the same one twice. Let's see.
I may
Cover that
have.
all you want. It is not convincing. And if you just study the text, you can see that.
Okay, so it seems like you do not deny an allegorical interpretation, you just deny this specific one. So you understand that the Song of Solomon is meant to be taken allegorically, and that is why it's canonical. But there are a lot of reasons to think that this allegory foreshadows...
What's that?
So, yeah, there's allegories, there's metaphors in it, but it's pretty clear that scholars are aware of those allegories and metaphors. And so my reply to Muslims on this is like, what is Muhammad doing? Or what's going on when she goes down to the nut orchard? Or when he puts his hand in her keyhole? What is that an allegory for?
We know exactly what it is. Muhammad traveled through time, got a sex change operation, became a woman, but he's still a prophet. So he gets a vision of himself in the future, falls in love with his future self. His future self falls in love with his female self, and they start having visions of going to town on each other, even though it's the same person.
Yeah, so they want to say this is all allegory, and it's always like, what are you talking about? This is not an allegory for anything. It's an allegory for sex.
Notice the real approach here, right? The approach is, hey, let me go to the middle of a book, which clearly has nothing to do with Muhammad, go to a verse which clearly has nothing to do with Muhammad, makes absolutely no sense. And if you were to take this seriously, you'd have to say that Muhammad is he was lusting after a woman who's been dead, so he's a necrophile. And if you take it seriously, you have to say, okay, Mahmad, that means Muhammad, and so he's Ezekiel's wife, and God says he's going to profane Mahmad in another verse and so on. And we're going to say that this is Muhammad. And as soon as you object and say, hey, this makes no sense, I say, but you admit it's allegorical, so we can insert anyone into the text. It's like, seriously? Great. Then Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who started the Ahmadis, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to just say it's about him. Prove us wrong. Prove us it's allegory. We can say whatever we want, right? Come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to read the allegories in their ancient Near Eastern context and their Hebraic context, and it's pretty clear. This is why I have not read a scholarly commentary on Song of Solomon from like the past couple decades that says this is anything other than sex. You can go back to maybe theologians from 100, 200 years ago that were quite prudish and didn't want to admit it, but scholars that specialize in the ancient Near East and the Hebraic language know what this is. They reject the early Christian and Jewish attempts to try to hide it. It's just we just know this at this point.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you want to continue with your buddy here?
Yeah, because he's going to try to argue the text describes Muhammad, and it's going to be, of course, quote mining.
It's going to be awesome. It's about to be epic.
Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because of how well he matches the physical description, how his name
the physical description.
How do you know?
Is in the text, and how his location is alluded. Chapter 1, verse 5 says, I am dark but lovely like the tents of Kedar. Kedar is one of the sons of Ishmael, and he is the father of the Quraysh tribe, the tribe which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, literally came from.
And by the way, just everyone notice, if you just tuned in late, that's a woman talking. That's the bride talking. This is the problem we see over and over again. We're supposed to take him seriously, and yet he clearly just looked up the word Kedar and said, "Oh, this has to be Muhammad. It has to be Muhammad."
Exactly.
And you should never trust anything this guy says at any point after this without looking it up, because if he's that sloppy that he just called his prophet a woman, and to his credit, you said that he said, "Okay, my mistake." That's good. That is good. That gets him some points. But I mean, if he's being that sloppy, he clearly is talking about a book. That's the first chapter. That's the first thing you see when you read it, right? That means he hasn't read this book. He has no clue what's going on in the book. He doesn't know who's speaking in the book, and yet he's speaking to, I don't know how many followers. He's speaking to thousands of people, telling them this is why you should believe in Muhammad. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm completely ignorant of what this book means, but I heard it from my apologists, who are the biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen and who prey upon our ignorance. And they said it's Muhammad, so I'm just going to say it to you. And notice the ignorance just gets passed on. And again, the goal is just, can we spread ignorance faster than these other guys like David Wood and Mike Jones can come in and actually correct all of the blunders?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He just probably did a Bible search for Kedar and just jumped to conclusions. I did try to see if any other Muslim apologists were making this argument. I think this one came from him. I don't think I tried looking it up to see if maybe he got it from somewhere, but I think he just did a search and found Kedar. But I mean, I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so we ready to? All right, so
Yeah.
he nailed that one. All right.
When we get to chapter 5, verse 10, when the daughters of Jerusalem start describing their beloved, we see that the description matches
Stop.
Prophet Muhammad to a T.
All right.
Stop. The daughters of Jerusalem are not describing their beloved. Just read it. You haven't read it. Like it's the bride.
And notice it's daughters of Jerusalem. How did the daughters of Jerusalem 900 to 1000 BC somewhere in there know about Muhammad? Was this a group of female prophets, Muslims who only believe in male prophets? Was it a group of female prophets getting a vision of Muhammad? Please explain it to us. All right.
And I also like that it's describing Muhammad to a T. It can't be anybody else. You can't think of anyone else this could ever be. Like, just like take these vague references and just turn molehills into mountains. Jump to crazy conclusions about how specific it can be. It's ridiculous.
And that's all they can do. And this is supposed to be Muhammad saying, this is how you can know I'm a prophet. Go to that book. I'm going to be in there. And this is what they come up with. This is what they come up with. He's a woman. He's a woman. And my goodness. And the daughters of Jerusalem, 1,500 years before he was born, are talking about him. Talking about his physical appearance. All right, here we go.
The Prophet Muhammad was a chief amongst 10,000 when he conquered Mecca, and
Told you.
Chief among 10,000, right? Now notice, in the context, she's talking about his physical appearance, right? Notice, by the way, guys, that's what's called equivocation, right? Equivocation. Chief among 10,000 in the text means she's talking about his physical appearance, and it's if you line up 10,000 people, he's going to be the sexiest. Whereas this guy's using it, chief among 10,000 means like he's the military chief.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. So, yeah, total equivocation. I don't know if he knows any better. He doesn't seem to know anything about the passage. All right, we ready?
Yeah, and yeah, it actually is referring to being distinguished. It's not saying chief.
Yeah.
ties into another prophecy in Deuteronomy 33, verse 2, where God
Right, now he's going to a different book.
He's saying it's just like another prophecy in Deuteronomy 33.
Okay. Guys, before he speaks, and I'll back it up so we can see at the beginning of what he's saying, notice the passage that's highlighted here. Because first, we've got Muhammad, the time-traveling transgendered prophet and so on. And now we find out that Muhammad is God. Look at the passage that he put up there. Deuteronomy 33, verse 2. And he said, the Lord came from Sinai and dawned on, and Lord there in all capitals, that's Yahweh. Yahweh came from Sinai and dawned on them from Seir. He shone forth from Mount Paran, and he came with who came? He came with 10,000s of saints. So who came with 10,000s of saints? Yahweh. He's got it highlighted. He sees who it is, and he's arguing, he's claiming that this is Muhammad. So Muslims who avoid associating partners with Allah have just declared that Muhammad is Yahweh, the God of the Bible. Now, so just to be clear, my friend on TikTok, you just committed shirk, the unforgivable sin in Islam. Well, let's go ahead and look at what he says. Do you want to add anything before?
He tries to say that this is just, God coming through his servants. But I have not read a commentary that claims that this is talking about Yahweh coming. Now, you could say this is metaphorical. This is basically just saying, look how great Yahweh is. Look how he just comes with these saints from the heavens, these other Elohim. I mean,
if you look, they were just traveling. They were traveling through these areas on their way to the promised land. And you could also describe it as, if you're looking that way, you'd see like the sun rising or something like that. But God was walking before them as a pillar of fire. And so God actually was going along this route right here. The absolute insanity of saying this is talking about Muhammad, this absolute blasphemous nonsense, deifying your prophet, where it says the Lord, and you say, that's Muhammad. That's Muhammad. My
it's
goodness.
about Israel's conquest. It's not a prophecy. You can't turn it into something it's not.
All right, let's listen to what he says.
Okay, and this ties into another prophecy in Deuteronomy 33, verse 2, where God shines forth from Mount Paran, which is synonymous with Arabia, with
Stop, it is not.
10,000 saints in a
It's
fire.
not.
No.
Paran is likely in Sinai. We're not entirely sure, but if you read 1 Kings 11:18, it says, this is Hadad, set out from Midian. Now, we know where Midian is. It's in the northern part of Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
So someone sets out from Midian. They came to Paran and took men with them from Paran and then came to Egypt.
Yep.
What's in the middle of Egypt and Midian? Sinai.
Yeah.
So Paran is likely in the Sinai area.
Yeah, AP and I actually, we put a map up and we brought up some passages about people traveling and so on. And every time they wanted to say it refers to Mecca, he would actually draw a line saying, okay, if it's Mecca, then you had to start here and to go all the way down here, hundreds of miles into the desert to just come all the way right back up for no reason. And yeah, it's just notice once again, he's counting on people to have no clue about any of this, right? It depends on that. As if you have any idea, if you've ever looked at a Bible map or you know anything about Paran from the Bible, this is complete nonsense. If you've ever read the passage about what this is actually talking about, but notice what it says 10,000's right there. The only thing that's ever referred to 10,000 in history is Muhammad's army. It's got to be him. It can't be anything else.
No.
Can't be anything else. All right, we ready to listen to this guy?
Oh, yeah.
On his right hand, which is the Quran. And then in verse 16,
Wait,
his
did
name
you
is
hear that?
Hang on, let's see.
Thousand
He said that what
saints in a
Yahweh
fiery law on
brings-
his right.
The fiery law is the Quran in Deuteronomy 33.
Notice this is Yahweh, from his right hand came a fiery law for them, and that's the Quran. From Muhammad's right hand came the Quran. Muhammad just blasted the Quran straight out of his hand like a superpower. He's a new Avenger. Plow, plow, Quran, plow, 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 plow. Surah 9, verse 29, plow.
I mean, if you read the full chapter, it's talking about the law that the very next verse, when Moses commanded us a law as a possession.
just notice the first verse. This is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. Children of Israel, I'm here to bless you with this new. I'm gonna say Yahweh, but I really mean Muhammad, a guy who's going to inspire his followers to hate you more than anyone else in history.
It's a lot. Again, the mental gymnastics are impressive. It's almost a work of art.
It is. It's it tells us a lot about the religion, that this is like the dominant form of apologetics here.
And no scholar comes to the conclusion, like as agnostic about this, and comes like, Deuteronomy 33 clearly about Muhammad. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No one.
All right.
Which is synonymous with Arabia, with 10,000 saints in a fiery law in his right hand, which is the Quran. And then in verse 16, his name is literally in the text. Hebrew-speaking scholar Ali Atayi notes that the word is derived from the archaic Semitic triliteral root word known as Hamed, H-M-D. The word Hamad means to praise, to glorify, to exalt, to covet, or to love. The Hebrew in this verse is spelled Mim, Cha, Mem, Dalet, and that's the exact same way that the Arabic is spelled. Just because the Hebrew could be pronounced as Cha instead of Ha doesn't change the fact that it's the exact same word.
Okay,
and
this is the problem. Mm-hmm. It's a two-syllable word. It's Mahmed. It's not Mim Ha. It's Ha. And it's too harsh. You're adding a syllable in there to make it Muhammad.
And even if he wants to pronounce it however you want, does not change the fact that the word occurs in multiple places, and he just claimed that Muhammad was Ezekiel's wife. If you want to say that Mahmud, pronounce it however you want. Muhammad, pronounce it however you want. Muhammad is now Ezekiel's wife, according to our Muslim apologist friends here.
Yeah, it's we were talking about the pronunciation earlier, but yeah, it's Mem Ha Mem Dalet. That's Mahmed. Mm-hmm. I don't know any way to say that. Like if you to add another syllable in there, it's just unnecessary and very unlikely. And you don't get that until, as even their own Muslim scholars and Hebrew scholars will note, is corrupted by Islamic and Syriac linguistics.
All right, here we go.
Not even where the song ends. It ends in verse 6, where the daughters of Jerusalem are asked where the lover has gone. And the daughters replied, the lover has gone to his garden where the balsam trees grow. And then in Genesis 37, we see the Ishmaelites.
And she went to Muhammad's nut orchard.
Like it's like you know when you talk to kids and you use euphemisms or innuendo, so you're not saying what the kids understand. Yep. Like mommy and daddy need some time alone, kind of thing. It's like that. It's like he doesn't get the euphemisms there. This is, if he would just read chapter 4, studied the scholarly commentaries on it, you would see what the reference to a garden is.
Oh, I mean, at the very least, read the book, because as we pointed out, he had no clue who was even speaking in the passages, so he didn't even understand what's in chapter 1 and who's speaking. So,
and if you go back, he takes like Song of Solomon 6:2, he takes the Good News like translation or something, this obscure translation, so it can say balsam trees. Every other translation I've seen just says bed of spices. There's no word for tree in this. He's taking this obscure translation just so he can get trees. It's, again, cherry picking.
Yep. All right.
A kind of balsam. And then Psalms 84 mentions the valley of Bucca. And the
like
on their way to worship Yahweh. On their way to the temple. All right, go ahead. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, Dr. Josh Bowen was on Apostate Prophets channel showing that Bucca is not a reference to Mecca. Yeah. This is, again, just made up. There's no scholars that support such a crazy interpretation unless you're already reading the Bible through the lenses of the Quran.
Yeah, and guys, just think about that. I mean, you read the actual psalm. There's no way that... I mean, we've seen Muslims argue that it must be some unknown pilgrimage to Mecca that Jews were taking. And we don't know about that. But yeah, Jews must have taken this pilgrimage. They clearly talk about where they're going. It's a place of Jewish worship, and it definitely isn't Mecca. But notice, what's he doing? It just refers to Mecca. I'm just saying it, so it must be true. Why would I be making stuff up? Why would my apologist be making stuff up? It's not like in order to defend Muhammad's claim that he's found in the Bible, they will make things up. It can't be that. So just trust what I'm saying. All you TikTokers who have never read the Psalm, have never read Deuteronomy, have never read Song of Solomon, you haven't read any of this, just believe what I'm saying. It never crosses their minds to say, wait a minute, let me look this up. Oh, wow, this guy has no clue what he's talking. He didn't even know that he was talking about a woman in chapter 1. Why would I trust him on anything else? Dude, stop talking. It never occurs to them. It's the same thing with like Zakir Naik and Ahmed Deedat. No matter how many times they obviously and indisputably say false things, their people just keep trusting them. It's like, we don't care if you lie as long as you're lying for our profit.
Yeah, So he wants to say that Muhammad went down to Mecca at this point in Song of Solomon. So the beloved is missing. But then if you notice in verse 4, like I said, he's right back there so that she can go down to his nut orchard. Again, he's right there in the following verses. He didn't leave. What are you guys talking about? I don't know what to say. Again, just quote mine, cherry pick, take whatever you want. They'll take Song of Solomon 2. And if you go to Song of Solomon 2, you go to Bible Hub.
Hang on.
And you go to
hang on. I just realized that based on if everything they're saying is correct, and Muhammad is this time-traveling transgendered who fell in love with himself from the future, that was like some sort of vision of the transgendered woman Muhammad going to the male Muhammad's nut orchard. That's wild.
It's crazy,
stuff, right? Yes.
And if you also remember, again, in this passage, it says he's grazing on lilies. So what is Muhammad doing in Mecca? He went to Mecca to graze on. Does he have the same disease Nebuchadnezzar had, where he's going to graze? Like, what's going on here?
Got to be something like that.
Read the passage.
We can't do that. That would refute Muhammad.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. We ready? Here we go.
It's called the Valley of Bucca is because of balsam trees. And the ancient name of Makkah is Bucca. and Makkah is a valley. And many sources attest to the fact that balsam trees are indigenous to the Makkah, Medina, Hijaz area.
And a billion
So when you
other
put it all
places.
together, I really don't think it's that much of a stretch. I don't think we can refute that the Prophet Muhammad, peace
It's
be upon
not-
him, came
that's
from
it. That's-
Kedar.
It's not
that
too
he had
much of a
white and red
stretch.
skin color.
Not at
That he had
all,
wavy
no.
hair. That he was a chief amongst 10,000 at the conquest of Makkah. And how that ties into Deuteronomy 33. I also showed how his name is literally in the text between Arabic
Literally
and
in the
Hebrew
text.
because those are sister languages. And then I don't think you can refute how the
Can't refute
Ishmaelites
it.
were carrying a kind of
Not to
balsam.
us,
In
you
that
can't.
song 6, it ends with how the lover has gone to the garden where the balsam trees grow. And that the balsam trees are indigenous to the Hijaz area. And I actually will agree with you that Song of Solomon is one of our weakest arguments. And that's why I love using
the first
it.
intelligent
It's to show
thing
you
he
that
said.
You can't even disprove one of our weakest arguments.
We can't disprove one of the.
You can't do it. And I mean, notice what he's saying right here. You can't refute it. What are you talking about? This argument has been obliterated over and over and over again. What he means is once we're entrenched and we've decided, nope, this is about Muhammad, no amount of evidence will ever convince us otherwise. Ha ha.
Yeah. You know, I pointed out at some point, like David is described as being ruddy, described 10,000. I mean, it is like, oh, dark hair. Like, you guys, you know how many people in that region have dark hair?
All of them?
All of them. Like, this is not a prophetic book. I read David Carr's book, The Formation of the Hebrew Bible, and he actually argues, as more of a liberal scholar, Song of Solomon may go back to the time period of Solomon himself. Kind of diverting from other scholars, but he notes a very fluid text. Why? It's not a prophetic text. This is about two people lovemaking. So it would just be updated based on customs, times, and this is what happens with the Masoretic vow points. It's pronounced differently now. This text was updated constantly. There's no reason to think this was ever a prophetic book or it ever was said Muhammadin before the Masoretes.
And based on what he said at the end there, that goes back to what you said at the beginning. You drew a parallel between that and the Jesus mythicists, right? Notice the Jesus mythicist says, I don't see any evidence that Jesus existed. Prove me wrong. And what you mean by prove me wrong is I will not accept any evidence and you can't make me, right? And notice, once someone has adopted that methodology, of course, I mean, I could say, hey, Inspiring Philosophy, prove to me that you exist. And by the way, I can explain what maybe I'm in the Matrix. Maybe you're a ghost. Maybe you're an illusion. Maybe aliens are tricking me. Maybe I'm dreaming. I can come up with all sorts of reasons to think that this is not IP, an actual human being I'm looking at. And if I go into that method where I say, hey, I could just come up with some way of explaining any evidence that you give me, yes, no evidence will ever convince you. So that's the position of the Jesus mythicists, but it's also the position of Muslim apologists. Here, we've decided that this is talking about Muhammad, and nothing you ever say can convince us otherwise. Great. Guys, open up your Bible, pick a random verse and say, this is talking about Joseph Smith, and no one will ever convince me otherwise. Prove me wrong. You can't. Well, guess what? That's true. If evidence is irrelevant, if context is irrelevant, if the passage is irrelevant, if the chapter is irrelevant, if how many times you screw up is completely irrelevant, yeah, you can believe whatever you want. Great. If that's what you use to defend your religion, you got problems.
Why don't you play clip 4? Because clip 4. Clip 4, because we'll do an analogy. The Muslims are doing exactly what this guy is doing. So I made a little TikTok video of some crazy person on there, so people get kind of an idea. But this will give you an analogy of what Muslims are doing.
All right, here we go.
What if Adam in the Bible actually meant Adam? What if Eve actually stood for electron, which was taken from the rib of Adam?
Or maybe Adam stands for a Tom, in that their name is Tom. And maybe Hebrew stands for he brews, as in brewing beer. Or maybe we should interpret words as they're actually defined in their original languages instead of assuming they mean something else because they sound like other words in our language.
You look a little angry there.
Well,
But by the way, guys, did you understand what the guy was saying at the beginning? He's saying, what if Adam, A-D-A-M, what if that's really atom, like an atom in a molecule? And what if Eve is taken from Adam and Eve means electron?
But that's exactly what Muslims are doing with this.
Yeah.
They're defining Mahmed in later Arabic, not actually it's defined in its original context, in its original language. How is it any different?
And you pointed out, and I saw one of your video responses where you pointed out, and we've pointed this out too in the past, that if you really want to commit what we call the phonic fallacy, these words sound alike. Well, you've got Muslims saying Allahu Akbar, and Hebrew for mouse is it's got the ch in it, right? Akbar, Akbar. But
It's, depending on the dialect, it could be Akbar or Achbar.
And so, but notice Muslims can say Mahmad is Muhammad and so on. So you're fine with that. But notice, if we commit the phonic fallacy, then when Muslims say Allahu Akbar, if we just say, hey, that sounds like the Hebrew word Akbar, great. They're saying Allah's a mouse. Allah's a mouse. And they're just stuck with it.
And I've never heard a Muslim actually refute that argument. They get mad when we say it, but they just get upset. They don't actually ever refute this because it's the exact same thing. If you could just mix Hebrew and Arabic, you can say whatever you want. And so now their God is a mouse.
Yeah, and what's weird is as soon as you do that, they suddenly recognize how completely idiotic it is to say, oh, this Arabic word sounds like this Hebrew word, therefore we're going to say they're the same word. They're referring to the same thing, in which case Allah would be a mouse. Well, guess what, guys? There's a perfectly normal Hebrew word that is used in multiple places in the Old Testament in different forms because it has a different role in different sentences, and it's Mahmad, and it makes no sense to translate any of them as Muhammad because that's not what the word means. And if you look at what, Ahmed Dida and stuff, it's a name. Mahmad is a name. I mean, well, they'll say Muhammad is a name. You should never translate a name. Well, great. If you don't translate that because it's a name, then it's a name in all these other verses. It's a name in all these other verses, and it makes no sense. And you're stuck. You are absolutely stuck with Muhammad being Ezekiel's time-traveling transgendered wife. You're stuck with it.
Yeah. Yeah, this would all be avoided if they would just say, well, your books are corrupt, so we don't trust them. But they're so desperate to try to get Muhammad in them.
Easy route. It's the easy route. Hey, we don't believe in your books. But notice, they're stuck with it because their prophet has put them in this position. Their prophet's the one who said, the book, the Torah, and the gospel that you have, the Torah and the gospel that are with you, that's where you find me. So they're stuck. They're stuck with arguments like this and just, hey, can we spread this to enough people before they look it up? Because that's the only way Muhammad is not completely refuted. Whereas notice the correct reaction should be the correct reaction from Zakir Naik, from the apologists, from the scholars, and from every Muslim who's watching should be Muhammad said that he's in the Torah and the gospel that the Christians and the Jews still have. We're looking here. We've had 14 centuries to find the references, and the only references we find can be absolutely ripped apart as soon as you look at the passage. What's the obvious conclusion here? Oh, Muhammad's a false prophet. That's it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have never been less convinced of Islam until I started dealing with their apologists directly, specifically the TikTok ones. I mean, I just see some of their videos. I'm just like, are you? I had to explain to somebody on TikTok that Ahmed is not in Isaiah 42:1 because they were so convinced that the word etbach was a mistranslation or it was corrupted and it really meant Ahmed. And I'm like, the fact that I have to do this just shows like you guys aren't even trying. Like, this is really just bad reasoning.
We should at some point in the future maybe make because I don't think I've ever made just a normal, concise video on Isaiah 42. Well, because it's a long passage, it would have to be a long video. But yeah, maybe we should address that and then get together for a live stream at some point.
Yes, because they try that one too, and it's just as bad arguments.
All right. Anything else before we take off? I do have a link to. Oh, I should put your since you're on TikTok. Give me a link. I'll have to add it. Afterwards.
Yeah.
But send me a link.
Also, I'm going to be releasing an Exodus documentary. It's an hour-long documentary coming out this Friday, and Egyptologist David Falk helped me with it. We have a lot of evidence to argue for the Exodus. This is coming out in a couple days. We've been working on it for months. So if you want to check out that in a couple days, it's gonna be on my channel. It's gonna be amazing. I
Oh,
promise.
actually, yes, because not everyone's going to watch this all the way to the end to see that blurb. But if you want to go live sometime after that, and I'll watch it beforehand, and we can talk a little bit about it and tell people about it again.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. All right. Well, I think we've once again gone through this argument and shown how silly it is, ladies and gentlemen. A link to Inspiring Philosophy's page is in the description box. I'll also put a link to his TikTok in there. And it's cool. He's dealing with some Islamic issues now. And that means you will be you will be targeted. And a little side note, what's funny is the online harassment squads, they only have the same couple of manipulation tactics that they use over and over again. They'll do variations of all of them, but it's like they'll try one thing after another. They're looking for what works with a person. But one thing they don't understand, they don't ever understand personality type. They never do. They never understand different personality types. Like we've only done a couple live streams, and I've met you twice. We met down in South Carolina, and then in Texas. I think that
And
in
in
EPS.
San Diego.
Yeah, EPS,
San
right?
Diego, yeah.
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 So yeah, we've met a couple of times, but I mean, you could just see. You could tell by your videos if they understood personality types. It would be, I predict. You can tell me if I'm right here, but I would predict that the tone of your response is going to depend on how stupid what someone is saying is. How stupid is it? How deceptive is it? And how much of a jerk is someone being? And that if someone's basically, the dumber and the more deceptive and the more hostile someone's becoming, that's going to affect how aggressive you are in response and the tone you're addressing their material with. I'm saying that because everything they're saying is already massively stupid and deceptive. And so the only thing they've got left is being a jerk towards you. And they're about to be massive jerks towards you, thinking, ha, this will get him. And I would be looking at that and going, no, you need a different tactic with this guy, because you're just going to tick him off. And then, yeah. Anyway, is that about right?
Yeah.
Would that be right?
That's pretty close. And when people try to be jerks to me, I tend to just ignore them and just, go after the position more. I mean, atheists did it for, not all atheists. There's plenty of nice atheists out there, but I had a lot of really disrespectful atheists, so it just made me want to go after atheism more. So, I mean, they want to be a jerk to me, they're just going to make me want to go after Islam more.
And by the way, I've been telling that for years. They're like, they're trying to harass you into silence when it's just like, oh, you're just making me go out after your prophet even more. And you're making me not be nice about it. You go back to you go back like 14, 15 years ago. I was the guy going, guys, let's not call Muhammad a pedophile. We do need to bring up Muhammad and Aisha, but there's no point in using these harsh words needlessly that don't really add anything to the argument. Now I'm like, yeah, you're pedophile. Why? Man, 13, 14, 15 years of we're going to kill your wife and rape her and blah, blah, blah. I'm not being gentle with your prophet anymore.
Yeah, understandable.
Anyway, thanks, Mike, for joining us, and we'll catch you all next time.